Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Luna Nozawa had always been a bright light, a young woman with ambitions beyond the confines of her little village. She'd arrived in Los Angeles with stars in her eyes, expecting to make a name for herself in the fashion industry. Forrester Creations had been her ticket, a prestigious firm where creativity and ambition intersected. She began as an intern, eager to prove herself, and the Forresters were drawn to her quick wit and acute eye. But ambition, she discovered, came at a cost. Her climb had been quick, but riddled with pitfalls. Luna's charisma and talent made her a fan favorite, but they also dragged her into the web of conflicts and secrets that constituted the Forrester dynasty. She hadn't intended to get caught up in their drama, but love and loyalty had a way of drawing her in. Her relationship with R.J. Forrester had begun sweetly, with stolen looks and late-night conversations in the design studio. However, R.J.'s world was one of riches and power, and despite her best attempts, Luna always felt like an outsider looking in. The trouble began when Luna came across something she wasn't supposed to see. It was late, and the office was silent save for the hum of sewing machines that had been left on by mistake. She'd stayed behind to finish a sketch, her pencil swishing over the paper, when she overheard a discussion that altered everything. Steffi Forrester, co-CEO, was contemplating a dubious arrangement that, if revealed, may wreck the company. Luna had no intention of eavesdropping, but the terms cover-up and evidence stuck with her. She froze, her heart beating, realizing she had heard too much. Luna's life began to collapse from that moment on. Steffi's acute eyes missed nothing, and despite Luna's attempts to appear normal, the tension was evident. Whispers trailed her throughout the hallways of Forrester Creations. Colleagues she once considered friends began to drift apart. R.J., split between his family and his affections for Luna, grew aloof as well, his trust weakening in the face of his sister's accusations. Luna attempted to keep her head down and focus on her work, but the weight of what she knew grew heavier each day. The breaking point occurred after a heated exchange at a workplace gala. The evening was a spectacular occasion, with champagne flowing and designers showing their most recent creations. Luna, clothed in her own gown, had a brief moment of pride, until Steffi stopped her in a quiet passage. "Do you think you can just walk in here and destroy everything we've created?" Steffi's voice was low and nasty. Luna tried to deny it and explain that she didn't plan to cause difficulty, but Steffi didn't listen. The charge lingered in the air. Luna was a liability. Days later, the cops showed up at Luna's residence. The charges were vague, something about corporate espionage and falsified proof that portrayed her as a traitor. Luna's protests were unanswered. The Forresters wielded power, and Los Angeles was their stronghold. Before she knew what was going on, she was in detention, her hopes crumbling like ash. The trial was a blur, a formality staged by those with far more power than she could ever hope to wield. Then came the transfer. Luna was startled out of her thoughts when the van unexpectedly came to a halt. The doors creaked open, revealing a bleak, gray structure encircled by barbed wire and towering pine trees. The secret prison was nothing like the glamorous world of Los Angeles. It was cold, lonely, and designed to make people disappear. Guards took her inside, their expressions expressionless, and their grasp on her arms firm. The cell they carried her to was modest, with a solitary cot and a barred window that overlooked nothing but unending trees. Luna sat on the cot, her thoughts whirling. How had things gotten to this? She merely wanted to belong, create, and love. However, in the world of the bold and the beautiful, trust was a luxury, and secrets were valuable. She remembered her mother, Poppy, who had warned her about getting too close to the Forresters. "They're not like us, Luna," she had said. "They'll chew you up and spit you out." Luna had not listened. She had assumed she could traverse their world, that her talent and passion would be sufficient. She'd been mistaken. Days went into weeks, and each one merged into the next. The prison was a place of monotony and silence, punctuated only by the clang of doors and the mutter of other inmates. Luna attempted to hold on to optimism, doodling designs on pieces of paper with the stubby pencil the guards had given her. She drew outfits, jackets, even complete collections, putting her longing into each line. It was her method of staying sane, of reminding herself who she was beyond the prisoner number they'd given her. But hope was a delicate thing. Letters from outside were uncommon, and when they did arrive, they were carefully edited. RJ had written once, a brief note full of apologies and vows to rectify things. Luna read it till the paper frayed, but no help arrived. The Forresters had a broad reach, and their power kept her locked away. She questioned whether RJ was battling for her or whether he had been persuaded by his family's tale. The uncertainty gnawed at her like a continual agony. Luna stayed awake one night as a storm raged outside, listening to the rain fall on the jail roof. She reflected on the life she had left behind, the lights of Los Angeles, the hum of the city, the joy she had experienced with RJ. She thought of her mother, who must be distraught, and her friends, who had most likely believed the lies about her. The loneliness was crushing, but it also strengthened her resolve. Luna was not a quitter. She'd been through too much to give up now. She started to plot. The prison was secure, yet no area was impregnable. She studied the guards' daily routines, noting their shifts and tendencies. She befriended another convict, Carla, who had been imprisoned for reasons she wouldn't reveal. Carla had a sharp mind and a talent for detecting nuances that others overlooked. They murmured about possibilities, how to slip through the crevices and find a way out. It was risky, but Luna had nothing else to lose. As the weeks grew into months, Luna's plan began to take shape. She and Carla collaborated in secret, sharing their knowledge and resources. Luna's quiet determination influenced a sympathetic guard who occasionally turned his gaze away. It wasn't much, but it was adequate to keep her going. The sketches she'd made became more than simply a distraction. They were a pledge to herself that she'd take back her life. She envisaged walking out of here, going back to Los Angeles, and establishing her innocence. She'd confront the Forresters again, not as an intern or an outsider, but as someone who had survived their betrayal. The night of the escape was moonless, and the air was thick with the danger of another storm. Luna's heart hammered as she and Carla crept into the shadows, their feet silent on the concrete floor. Every sound, from a creak to a faraway cough, felt like a warning. But they persisted, motivated by despair and the small possibility of escape. The details of their plan were basic but precise: a loosened vent, a forgotten service tunnel, and a moment when the guards became distracted. Luna caught her breath as they crawled through the darkness, her hands trembling but her thoughts calm. When they stepped outside, the chilly air hit Luna like a wave. For the first time in months, she felt alive. The forest loomed around them, enormous and unforgiving, yet it was preferable to the cell. Carla grasped her hand, and they bolted, their footsteps muffled by pine needles. They had no idea where they were headed, but they knew they needed to keep moving. The prison's alarms would soon sound, and the search would begin. Miles away, in Los Angeles, the Forrester family went about their business, unaware of the tempest developing in Luna's heart. Steffi sat in her office, signing contracts, her confidence unshakable. RJ, still troubled by Luna's absence, questioned his family's conduct, but lacked the authority to confront them. The city glittered as usual, unaffected by the anguish it had caused. Luna had no idea what lied next. The journey to freedom was lengthy, and the Forresters would not let her leave easily. But as she sprinted into the forest, her breath ragged and her pulse pounding, she felt something she hadn't felt for months: hope. She wasn't just Luna Nozawa, the intern who had been duped. She was a fighter, a dreamer, and a woman who would triumph again. And one day, she would come to Los Angeles, not to beg, but to recover what was rightfully hers. The story about Luna's escape was merely the beginning. The world of the bold and the beautiful thrived on drama, and Luna was eager to write her own story. She would confront the Forresters, reveal their secrets, and rebuild her life on her own terms. The prison had attempted to break her, but it only made her stronger. And when the first rays of morning broke through the woods, Luna knew one thing for sure. Her story was far from ended. The sky over Los Angeles glowed with a deep gold as the black van moved away from the city limits, its windows tinted and its path obscured. Inside, Luna was confined by quiet rather than metal. She could still taste the salt in her tears as the city lights faded in the distance. Her city, her dreams, her memories. Every street corner she passed in her mind was a moment she would never have again. The van's hum masked out the sound of her heartbeat, but not the anguish that accompanied it. Luna once believed that the world was lovely, that people could change, and that love could heal everything. But when the walls closed in, when betrayal struck, all of her convictions broke like glass beneath her feet. She recalled the last day in Los Angeles, how the air trembled with anxiety and how every glance from those she trusted revealed a secret. She'd stood in the harsh fluorescent light of an interrogation room, her wrists red from the cuffs, and realized no one was coming to save her. They stated that it was not a prison, but rather a containment facility, and that she would be protected. But Luna knew that people exploited the word safety to hide cruelty. The van came to a stop many hours later. The guards dragged her out into the darkness. The air smelled of rain and pine, not like the seaside air she grew up with. She blinked against the cold, the mountain fog surrounding her like a cloud. Ahead of her appeared a gray property concealed deep within the forest, ringed by curved inward-facing gates, as if the world itself was trying to swallow her. Inside, everything was white and quiet. No names and no windows. Just numbers. The other women hardly spoke. They were ghosts in gray uniforms, with sunken eyes from too much remembering. Luna ate very little throughout the first week. The food tasted like dust and chemicals, and as she tried to swallow, her throat tightened. She spent nights sleeping on the tiny mattress, staring at the ceiling cracks and counting them like days. Every sound, a door closing, footfall in the hallway, made her flinch. But even here, she couldn't stop thinking about him, the one who had sworn to protect her and vowed to face anything together. His face plagued her like an enduring symphony. She couldn't decide whether she should despise him or keep him. The silence of the prison made memories more tangible than the present. She remembered how his hand felt in hers and how softly he spoke her name. Luna, he'd whispered once, while they stood by the ocean, no matter what happens, I'll find you. But those words had vanished. Days progressed into weeks. She began to notice things, small kindnesses that slipped through the cracks. A guard had left an extra piece of bread. A nurse who looked at her with pity rather than disgust. A whisper in the corridor spread the rumor that some convicts didn't belong here, that the institution housed individuals who knew too much or were inconvenient to the powerful. Luna began writing on scraps of tissue paper, words she tore from her own heart. Remember who you are. They can cage my body, but not my truth. I still believe in the light. She put the scraps beneath her mattress, terrified of losing even those bits of herself. She awoke one morning to the faint and seemingly surreal sound of music. Someone in the cell block was humming a familiar tune that sounded like liberation. It was enough to get her to cry again. She hadn't realized how much she missed music, laughter, and the world beyond these walls. Then came the letter. It emerged one night under her pillow, and signed and scribbled in rushed script. Luna, don't give up. The truth about what transpired in Los Angeles is starting to emerge. You weren't expected to take the fall. Someone is battling for you. She read it repeatedly, her heart racing. The paper had a subtle fragrance of smoke and rain, which seemed familiar. Could this be him? Could he have discovered her at all? She did not dare to show anyone. But the optimism it sparked within her was perilous and alive. She began to notice patterns, such as the timing of the guards' rounds, the way certain doors opened when others closed, and the flicker of a camera that occasionally went dark for too long. She began to listen, learn, and survive. The other women grew to trust her. There was Mara, a modest artist who etched figures into soap bars and concealed them under her blanket. There was Yara, who spoke little English but had a storyteller's eye. And there was Elle, older, strong, and protective, who looked at Luna and said, "You have fire in you. Don't let them smother it." They became like a family, united not by blood, but by grief. They whispered at night and laughed in private moments. They reminded each other that they were still human. Months have passed. Winter arrived. The woodland outside has gone white, and the air is as sharp as glass. Luna's hair grew longer, her physique slimmer, and her spirit both brittle and unbreakable. She dreamed of sunlight, waves, and the aroma of jasmine and salt. She had a dream about freedom. Then one morning, a siren broke the silence. The doors clanged open. The guard shouted something about a breach. Smoke flooded the corridor. Luna and the others fled in the ensuing pandemonium. She had no idea where she was heading. All she knew was that she could not stay. Her bare feet struck the chilly concrete. The air had burnt her lungs. She dashed out of a half-open door into the snow, the light dazzling. For a brief minute, she felt free, the cold piercing her skin, her heart pounding like a bird's. But freedom was a delicate thing. The guards were behind her, yelling her name, and the jungle stretched forever ahead. She staggered among the trees, her breath becoming misty and her palms numb. She raced till her legs gave out, and she collapsed on her knees by a cold creek. For a long time, she just knelt and listened to the silence. Then she heard it, the faint hum of a vehicle approaching. She turned, anticipating the worst, but it wasn't their van. It was smaller, older, and the headlights flickered. When the door opened, she lost her breath for a split second. That was him. He appeared different, older and exhausted, yet it was him. The same eyes that once treated her as if she were the only light in the world. "Luna," he said quietly, going into the snow. She could not move. Her throat tightened around his name. "I told you I'd find you," he said. She wanted to believe it, to leap into his arms, but the months of grief, doubt, and betrayal kept her back like invisible chains. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was hardly audible. "Why didn't you arrive sooner?" His face broke. "I was told you were gone. They claimed you had confessed." "I tried." She shook her head, her face frozen with tears. "They made me. They forced me to say things I didn't do." He closed the gap between them, reaching out, apprehensive and quivering. "Then join me. Now. I know people who can help us." But before she could respond, the sound of motors filled the air again, louder and closer. The jungle echoed with shouts. He glanced at her with despair in his eyes. "We don't have time." Luna returned her gaze to the compound, then to him. The globe appeared to hold its breath. For a heartbeat, she remembered their old life, the laughter, the love, the endless sky above the Pacific. And suddenly it was gone. She took his hand. They ran. The snow clung to their legs, and their breath was raspy. Floodlights shone behind them, cutting through the treetops. A voice roared via a megaphone. "Stop or we will shoot." But Luna did not stop. She could not. They arrived at the ridge where the mountain descended into mist. Below was a wild river, frozen in some places and screaming in others. He looked at her with eyes that were filled with both terror and affection. "You can trust me," she said, nodding. They jumped. She couldn't catch her breath after falling. The cold struck like blades. For a while, she wasn't sure which way was up. Then she broke through the surface, gasping as the current drew her beneath. She felt his hand, then lost it. When she finally arrived at the coast, she was alone. The jungle went silent again. Her body shook uncontrollably, and her vision dimmed. She clambered onto the rocks and called his name once or twice, but the river only responded with echoes. She remained there till dawn, the light gentle and gray. Her body ached, and her heart felt heavier than ever. He was gone, but somewhere inside her, a weird peace began to emerge. She was still here, still alive, still free, in whatever small manner that counted. She took a long breath, elevating her gaze to the horizon. The sun was rising over the mountains, illuminating the world in gold. For the first time in months, she felt a warmth on her face.